So now we're going to make a push pot. It's one of the easier things to make, and yet you're going to have some good results, especially after you get it back when it's glazed. Take a piece of clay, and you want to make it sort of in a ball shape. This one's a little high, but you can have it lower like this one or not. And you get the edges off of it a little bit, you work the base so it's going to stand up. And then in order to make it a pot, you take your thumb and you push down in the center. Or if your hands are pretty small and you have something laying around like this, or the back of a big work spoon or something, you can use this to push down. And what you will do is you'll measure the depth of the clay. The clay is this thick. When you push it down in there, you want to leave this much for the bottom. So I work it down from my spot till I have a bottom of what I showed you, and then you can tell that the bottom is good. Once you have the hole in it, then you gently take your thumb in the inside or your fingers and you start squeezing your hand like this. It makes the hole larger. And that's how you make a push pot. You keep pushing around the edges and the hole keeps getting larger and larger. The outside can have a real unique look, or you can use something and smooth it off. But you work on it for a little while. You don't try to do it all in one push because the clay is soft, and if you just push on it really hard, you'll squish right through it and you'll have a hole in the side of your pot. You could actually make this a little planter for a small plant by piercing a hole in the bottom. Your mother might want to grow herbs or something in the window, and it would be pretty depending on what color glazes you choose. But as I work on it, it takes a little while. You kind of shape it with your thumb or your fingers. You know, I can have my fingers in there. Or you can use the block in there and push against the block. The block will make it nice and smooth on the inside, whereas your fingers will leave more of an impression. Makes the hole bigger and larger. And you want to keep the top edges about this thick. If you get thinner than that, it'll be a little hard to hold. It'll probably crack. So you want to have a little thickness to the edges. You kind of work it around. You take your fingers and you make it bigger and larger. You push out. If you pick it up in your hand, you can use your hand to push against so you don't tear through it. And the shape of this one is kind of like a cup, and it can actually be used like a cup. You make it. Check inside to see that it's kind of smooth. Any rough edges, and they dry rough like that, they'll be sharp after they're fired. So you want to have it kind of smooth. And it's going to shrink. As the clay dries, it shrinks about 16%. So you'll be quite surprised at how a big piece will, go on down and be kind of small. So this is about good at this size. So now we can decorate it. And the outside, the way we can decorate it is you can use one of your tools and you can just draw something on the side like little flowers. Get something like that. And as it dries, you might want to smooth it out a little bit. You could draw Christmas trees. Since it is fall, you can draw a maple leaf. Or you could write your name on the outside, but you have to be gentle because you don't want to go all the way through the clay. And then when this dries, you're going to take your fingers and you're going to wipe off these little excess pieces. They'll come off nice and easily when it's dry. So there's a little push pot, and we're going to do it once more with a little larger piece of clay. This piece of clay, I cut it before, and now it's kind of more rounded and more flat. So this one will actually be a bowl. Don't be afraid to use a little bigger piece of clay, but you have to work slowly. I'm using my thumb here. You could use a dowel or the back of a big spoon or something and get the hole started. And you just kind of go around squeezing it. And it can take you a little while. You don't have to hurry at it. Your hands are going to be a little smaller than mine. So don't worry about it. Just kind of work on it, squeeze it a little. turn it a little, squeeze it a little. And even if you have to take a break, and you want to wait a couple of minutes, 5 minutes for your hands to relax or something, the clay will stay fine for a while. It's just that if you're going to try and work on it, a couple hours apart, you should cover it with a piece of plastic. The stuff that your mom wraps food with, saran wrap, or you can use an old plastic bag from the store. Now this one's looking much more like a bowl, and actually you can eat food out of them. Once they're glazed, they'll be food safe. They can go in the microwave, they can go in the dishwasher, or you can wash the dishes yourself. And you have to just work the bottom and you work the edges, squeezing them. I don't want to get it too thin. So this is looking like a pretty good sized bowl now. I may even fire it and try to eat out of it myself. So that's a push bowl, and it can be decorated with all sorts of things. You can take a little piece of clay and you can squish it up in your hand. Make a little round ball, squeeze some ears out of it, squeeze a little nose onto it. Now this is where you need to use slip. Slip is how we join two pieces together. Slip is just a little wet clay. When you're using this fresh clay like this, you don't need much. You just need a little clay with a little water on it. You can rub that on the edge of where you want to stick something. Make a couple little score marks, just gentle little marks to rough up the surface so it has something to stick to. And I'm going to make an indent on the bottom of this to stick over the edge. Score it a little bit. Put a little slip on it. So I have a face on the side of my bowl, and I'm going to stick it on. Work it back and forth a little bit until it starts to stick. And here you're going to have a little animal overlooking what you eat. So you can do that all around the bowl. You can do a couple of them separately. You could make any kind of other things to decorate it with, but there we have two push bowls. So now for this project, we're going to make a coil pot. It's a little different. It's what the early people used to make their pottery out of, and it's a technique that they used for centuries, and it's a very simple technique, and it can be very fancy or it can be very plain. We're going to start with rolled out clay. You guys all have that down by now, and I'm going to use this for the cutout. It's just something laying around the house. It's going to be the base. The base is a little thicker. The base is as thick as my finger. So it's just a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 inch if you're going to actually measure it. I'm going to push this down in it, and depending on what you use, you can either use it to push all the way through for a cut, or you can just use it for a score line. I think that this is going to be a score line on this, so then you use your needle tool and you go around the edges. You go around nice and slowly so you can stay in the line. And I have the circle there. Now for the coils to build on. This is going to be the base. So the first thing we're going to do on the base is go around the edge and do a little bit of scoring. And you want to make a little light line, all the way around. It's going to take you a couple of minutes. Doesn't have to be very deep. So now we're ready for the next step. We've scored the base. Now we're going to start making the coils to put on the pot. And because I've had slab clay already run out today, I'm going to use that. But you don't necessarily have to use the slab clay. What you can use is you just take a piece of clay and you take your hands and you roll it. You roll it back and forth until you get a pretty round piece, and then you can use that, and that's how a lot of people do it. This one, I'm using the slab clay, so I'm going to cut the pieces off the slab. These pieces will be a little flatter. They may stack a little better. Try to get them about the same width, although, this is kind of a hand-built piece. It's just whatever you feel like having it. The different thicknesses and bumps and grooves, they'll change with the glaze and they'll come out looking pretty interesting. So I have my slip, which everybody likes touching so much, I'm sure. And then I put the slip around the bottom. You move it around a little bit till it'll get sticky. You can actually feel it start to get a little sticky. And when you feel that, you know it's about ready to proceed. So that's sticky. Now I'm going to take this. I'm going to run a real gentle score on it the first. In fact, this is the edge piece. We're going to skip that because it's not the same thickness all the way through. We're going to go with this second piece in. And we're going to do just a little squiggle line, as that's a good enough score on these. Move your tool back and forth. And this just needs to be wet down a little bit with just a little of the wet clay water. So now it's ready to start building. You start in one spot and you stick this on right at the edge. Give it a little wiggle as you stick it. And that helps it grip. And a little push down, a little wiggle. And you can feel it stick. I mean, the clay gets sticky when you wet it like this. And the piece will stick nicely to it. Come around. When you get to the spot where you started, kind of break it off there. Smooth it out a little bit. Push it down a little bit. And then you're ready for the next level. A light scoring all the way around. And the softer your clay is, the less you need to worry about the scoring, but you do need to wet it. And if you do this well, it'll be a waterproof pot by putting plenty of slip in between, getting the pieces tight together. It'll become one, and that's how early people used to cook food and carry water and store food. So we got that. And we take this, do the same on this, really just a light line of moisture. So I wouldn't start exactly in the same spot. I'd overlap them a little bit, set it down, give it a little wiggle. This is coil building. There's no hurry, you just work your pace, just take it nice and easy. Since you're doing this at home, you don't have any time constraints. You can start in the afternoon if you have nothing else to do, and you can work on it. You can take a break for a while, then you continue on. If you're going to do that, you want to cover it with a old plastic bag or something like that, keep it a little bit soft, that'll help. And as you build this higher and higher, you may want to smooth out the insides a little bit with your fingers. It gets rid of some of the roughness. See how it's coming? I mean, it's a slow work, but it takes time to build it up. Just kind of push it down a little bit, give it a little squeeze, but you gotta remain gentle with it. It is clay, and it is soft enough that you can over push on it. And you just keep it up until you're happy with the size of your pot. I mean, it could be a bowl, it could be a serving dish. And when you glaze something like this, it does have a unique look to it because of all the lines and the edges. They all can catch the glaze and do a little different stuff with it. Just keep building. Smoothing out the inside as you go. This is where I'm going to leave you right now for today. You can work on this pot and build it as large as you like. When you're done, you may want to take the outside and take a little slip and go around and patch any little spots that look especially rough. You can make it as smooth as you like, or you can leave a lot of texture on it. You let it set it on the side and you let it dry. There is no limitations to making stuff like this. The early people used to make them that were big enough to carry 4 or 5 gallons of water. Thank you and have a good day. We'll talk to you soon.